Hey folks, welcome to episode 44 of Biomassed. We appreciate you listening, not live, most likely, and more to the point, probably from iTunes or YouTube. That's if we've updated our YouTube in the last month or two. I'm not entirely sure we have. But anyway, we appreciate you pulling this off your RSS feed and listening to us this week. As you can tell probably by this recording, we've had some issues with our live stream tonight, but never fear, we always want to make sure we knock a show out for you, and we're going to work extra hard to get this one up probably in the next 24 to 48 hours. That way there's not too much of a lag time. So we'll dive right in here into a second. So the layout for the show tonight is going to be kind of our standard fare, if you will. We'll get a couple round of CPM updates from the CPM crew that we have on board, and from there we'll go into a couple different topics. One of the things we wanted to touch on was a couple things that's actually happening on the Eve side that we found somewhat interesting. They're reworking the sovereignty mechanics, which is roughly the closest thing that you can draw an analogy to how PC works. And some of the things that we've noted is that there's actually some similarities in the proposals, which, again, absolutely not tinfoiling there, but it was kind of interesting to see some of the discussions going on about how SOV would work versus what we've talked about for PC. Also, and as we mentioned for the last couple of weeks, the CSM is being elected. They're almost done with their voting period in the Eve side. And they do have a vote match similar to what we did when we elected our CPM. And they asked an interesting question about dust to the CSM candidates. And we can review a little bit about what some of those guys said, at least the Eve perspective of dust. We won't spend too much time on that, but we did want to at least cover it a little bit. Now, the meat and potatoes of what we're going to talk about tonight is really going to come down to Hotfix Echo. Like, what did we see in Hotfix Echo? And what did we not see in Hotfix Echo? Probably the other thing that we want to have a quick chat about is perhaps some of the different things going on in the community, or things we would like to go on in the Dust community in terms of events or activities. And we would be remiss if we did not touch on the 5 million clone challenge. So all that stuff laid out on the table, and I'm totally going to forget at least 40% of it. We're going to dive right into our introductions, and we're going to start at the top of the list with one each, Mr. Iron Wolf Saber. Fail as we move down to Kane Spero.
Yes, Kane Spero, former member of the CPM and leader of the Negative Feedback Alliance.
Former Shadow Governor of Molden Heath. Pokey Draven.
I am Pokey Draven from OSG Planetary Operations, co-host here on Biomass, and I think the stream is working. So there, Scotty's status removed.
I'm gonna leave that to the audience to figure out if you can adequately fill in the shoes of the ubiquitous Scotty.
I don't think so. I mean, Scotty is Scotty, and that's just a bar that I don't expect any mere mortal to ever hit.
Scotty is OP in ways that a shotgun, a rail rifle, a heavy, an HAV, plasma cannon, flaylock, and anything else that we can think of has never thought about being. Okay, so moving on down to SMB.
Yep, SirManBoy here, member of CPM1, director over at Malon Labe, which is in General Sales Alliance. Thanks for having me, Jay.
Yep, absolutely, brother man. Soraya?
I'm Soraya Zell, a member of CPM1 and a co-host here on the show.
Thank you very much. And in case anybody is wondering, there's Soraya may or may not have to jet out a little bit early in the podcast tonight, because apparently the Animal Health and Welfare Services may be coming after him for Ferret bowling. I'm not entirely sure what that's going to entail for him, but it could be pretty tough for him in county up near Chicago. I hear they like guys like you.
I'm not in the same county as Chicago, so we get our county is like a nice cushy suburban jail, so should be fine.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, Iron Wolf, are you awake now?
I was awake.
And that was Iron Wolf's intro, folks. I was awake. No, really, Iron Wolf, you got an intro, bro?
This is Iron Wolf Saber of the CPM1. I'm secretary and all that, and here to annoy everybody.
Outstanding. And if anybody is wondering, one of Iron Wolf Saber's actual, jobs in the past that we've all recently just discovered, it just totally blew my mind. He was apparently a roadie for Aerosmith, and we'll kind of leave it at that. Although I guess if you look at his name, Iron Wolf Saber, that has all the hallmarks of like some kind of British hard rock thrash metal death band at some point, so that probably tells you a little bit about him as well. Okay, guys, we're going to jump right into the CPM update, and I will turn this over to Soraya, SMB, and Iron Wolf.
Zell?
Yes, SirManBoy?
Fine.
Oh, come on!
Fine. We've been talking about Hotfix Echo and all things that didn't make it into it and things that we're going to be planning for Hotfix Foxtrot when it comes out. Also, FanFest has been looming on everyone's minds this week, so it's been very split attention between things that we want to get done. We did have a meeting with CCP Rouge recently concerning a variety of topics.
Oh, right, we actually have... I completely forgot. We have CPM news this week.
Yeah, they gave us homework and everything, and I had to write it up, remember?
Yeah, there was that.
Anyways, things are hopefully moving within CCP, and I'm hoping we will get to see the light of that eventually. We'll keep pestering them for updates on that subject when it does come up.
Boom, and I'm going to add a little extra mustard to that messaging. That being that this CPM member is going to be in Iceland in a week, and if you want to grab a beer with him in Reykjavik, then you need to hit me up on Twitter, on the forums, send me a PSN message, whatever. Let's get a beer. Reykjavik, Iceland,
in a week
2015. Booyah.
Okay, so SMB will drink beer, and then Soraya will have fermented shark. This works out beautifully from my standpoint.
Do they serve ferret there by any chance?
I don't know. So tell me, Zell, do they?
I don't know, but I can't see a ferret eaten. That would like hurt.
That's interesting. I could totally riff on this for a good 5 to 10 minutes on you wearing like a skinned chinchilla fur coat up into Iceland as you chow down on like ferret meat with rotted shark on the side.
There might end up being a murder if someone did that.
Can't you get necro pants in Iceland? I heard those are pretty fashionable.
You can get fish scale pants.
I could totally see Zell wearing that. Okay. All right. I'm down with this.
You know how they get like snake skin and shark skin boots? Yeah, they got fish skin stuff.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. If you guys can get a picture of Zell in like that Jason Momoa Aquaman outfit, there would be real life Iskies involved in that, I'm sure.
I'm pretty sure they can try.
Well, they are having a cosplay event. I think it's like per day. I think they're going like different themes per day with some pretty legit prizes this year. Any bets on the resident CPM Snidely Whiplash, aka Denny Longfeet, like short stride, whatever the fuck his name is, actually showing up in some sort of full regalia again? I'm pretty sure he's already building it.
It's likely, particularly because they announced like a costume contest at FanFest this year.
That would be the cosplay event that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I think Denny's probably gonna have to just
I think he is showing up as war barge components this year, so that should be exciting.
Oh my god, that would have to be quite humorous. The only thing I can think of that would be better is if
Storm
you
box?
guys. No, I was actually thinking if you guys would show up as like a potted capsuleer. So like you're basically wearing spandex shorts with tubes coming out of your head, and you have to shave your head and cover yourself in like slime. It'd be fucking awesome.
That is way too much commitment for me.
So says the man who raises chinchillas for nefarious purposes.
I have one chinchilla.
And you have
That's what they all start with.
It only takes one.
I tried to get a second chinchilla. It didn't work out very well.
Colin only can hold so much room, brother.
So. Okay, all right. So let's press on. So what it sounds like in the sort of friendly fire exchange of who was going to break the NDA first between the 3 CPM members, that there may actually be some news coming. And I also noted that there was also some discussion about what is or is not in Hotfix Echo. I know one thing that was supposed to be in Hotfix Echo that I'm certainly going to talk about that did not make it in. So we will chat about that in a little bit. But anyway, I did want to kind of move on, unless you guys honestly had something else you wanted to throw out there.
That pretty much covers it this week. Well, we'll be trying to get CPM's 2 stuff after FanFest. Hopefully.
Okay. All right. No, yeah, that's fair. So what I wanted to do very briefly, we'll take a minute and talk about it. a little bit on the Eve side. I want to talk about the CSM elections first. So just to kind of set the stage, everybody remember, well, not everybody, but a lot of folks remember the vote match that Deidre Vale did for us, which is kind of a staple of the Eve CSM elections. Basically, the CPM candidates all went in, filled out a fairly lengthy questionnaire. You go in and you fill out like a parallel questionnaire, and then it sort of gives you a tally rating of it's sort of like Match.com for CSM candidates, if you will. That's the best sort of analogy that I can come up with. It's certainly not perfect, nor do I recommend that you actually vote the tally that it gives you, but it might give you a perspective on the relative level of importance that different subjects give you.
And with 77
from a
candidates, it
was
there's a lot of
definitely
candidates
useful.
to
It was
choose
definitely
from,
useful.
and so it can at least help narrow down who to look for.
I will definitely agree with that.
I mean, I voted for. There's a few incumbents that from the current CSM I certainly voted for this year. Interestingly enough, my top vote was one of the closest matches as well, and but then towards the bottom of my ballot, I filled in a few people who were very close to me on the vote match, and particularly on the answers to the questions that were of importance to me.
Sure, and that's kind of the cool thing is you can kind of rank order what's important to you. So what I thought was interesting this year as I went through this, and I did the vote match, one, because it's an interesting exercise. It's kind of a fun thing to do. But as Sarai Zell did mention, there were literally 77 vetted candidates for the CSM, for the 14 CSM positions, which is, to my knowledge, by far a record. So
yeah, I think there might have been 40 last year.
I don't think it was that many. I think the most they ever had was about 40, 45. But I think that was like a couple of years ago. And this is like actual vetted, like fully have submitted their paperwork, fully accepted, have gone past the background checks and everything.
There were 33 individuals for CSM 9.
Yeah, that makes sense. So almost triple. Definitely double. Anyway, the one question that struck me as I was totally surprised that was included in there was basically, to what extent should Dust 514 pertain to the Eve universe, or I think it's specific to sovereignty. Or what would it? How should it impact Eve play basically? I was not expecting to see that question in there. I think it was one of those that it was probably a holdover from last year's questions. But the fact that they included it was an interesting insight into some of the CSM candidates. And what I found interesting is I looked, because I highlighted that one as show me all the results for that question. I think all but 4 people, or let me put it this way, of those that filled out the vote match, which I think was somewhere around 45 or 50, not all 77 did. Only 4 that I remember said it should not be a part of Eve. It should not pertain to Eve or affect Eve gameplay. Think about that. Out of the majority of the candidates that filled it out, only 4 indicated that. And one of those, his comment was it should not pertain at all. It's kind of the multiple check box. But when you read his comment, what it said was, I want to hear what is going on with Legion. So that was kind of interesting in and of itself. And then when you read the responses from everybody else, it generally ranged from should be noticeable, but not have a major impact. Like you should be able to have some sort of linkage and notice it, all the way up to it should be a critical component of certain facets of the game, be it faction warfare or sovereignty. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there and did you guys have any comments on that? Particularly those of you that play a little bit of Eve on the side. I was curious what your thoughts are in terms of the candidates actually sort of giving a little bit of nod to Dust.
It's good. I mean, for me, the only my voting is in part determined on people's interest in Dust. Because I don't want people on the CSM who are going to be hostile towards, further integration with Dust in the future, which I still very much want to see. But it's one of those things that CCP needs to make it happen.
So I'm going to ask you a question, Zell, I'm legitimately not attempting to put you on the spot, but it's a for real question. Did you happen to notice who the only people were that said under no circumstances dust should affect Eve?
I don't think I scrolled that far because I obviously sorted it by the people who did.
Let me tell you the names. See if you recognize them.
Okay.
Sign Kumitomo,
Yeah, I
Indie
talked to
Post,
Sign.
Vic Jefferson, and Bam Stroker. So the top three that I just mentioned are all CFC Goonswarm candidates, with Scion and Indy being literally the number one and number two man for the Matani himself. And they were the only ones that were directly inimical to the thought of dust affecting Eve.
Well, in no uncertain terms, I can tell you that myself and the goons do not align all the time. In case in point, that I voted for a high-sec Care Bear as my top selection last year, and voted for him again this year. Though this year, said high-sec Care Bear actually made it onto even the goons list because he's a pretty awesome CSM 9 member.
You realize that Mike Azarai was not on the CFC ballot this year.
No. I vote Steve Ronikin.
Okay, no, just checking.
He's a high sec guy, and he made it on the CFC ballot as far as I know.
I think he made it as a third-party apps guy.
Yeah, but he is a high sec character. And as far as Cyan, so I do have Cyan on my ballot. It's in part because I've talked to him in person several times as well. When you look at Cyan's results on the vote match, though, I want to remind you that if you go to his biography on the vote match, it's song lyrics. If that tells you how seriously he takes the vote match.
Well, it's pretty serious. It's pretty obvious that Cyan doesn't take the CSM election process seriously at all. I mean, and the reality is he is the number one candidate for the CFC, so he
doesn't have to.
Default, yeah, by default he gets elected. He literally only does pro forma things in terms of this. So, but my point in all this was I was surprised at the number of candidates that were anywhere from somewhat to fairly positive about the thought of dust interacting, and I also noticed that quite a few of them were keen to get information about Legion. So that was sort of the, kind of the long way around the tree way of saying that sort of surprised me that you have Eve players talking about it.
But I mean, I think most of the responses I did read did come into the same category, which is the expectation that, Dust has to deliver on that as well, and has to provide the sort of, gameplay that they expect.
I would agree, and generally, just for everybody, I do have quite a few links to other Eve media folks, and I've been on a few shows, and I talked to quite a few people and done a little bit of blogging on the side. And the number one thing that I get from the Eve side, I legitimately think that there is a true false perception that most people on the Eve side wish dust would die in a fire. I mean, the reality there's going to be a very small minority that think that way. Or that, all consolers are peasants and all that kind of stuff, which is for the most part trolling, not overly serious. The reality is, when you really get into the actual truth of the matter, the number one thing I heard, and I've talked to quite a few people about this over the last probably 3 months, because I actually set out to try to do a little bit of fact finding on it, from the Eve side. The number one thing that you get down to is dust just wasn't delivered on. It wasn't done well. It could be on a PlayStation 3. It could be on a fucking Atari. It doesn't matter. But if it was done well, it would have been accepted with much more sort of open, if not open arms, at least a benign neutrality at worst from the bulk of the Eve players. So that was kind of the message that I got from most people, was that they were very keen to have something like dust involved in their game. But it simply just was not done well, and they could see it coming from a long way away that it probably wasn't going to be done well, which sort of, injected a lot of antibodies into the process.
There's another important thing, though, going through, I'm actually reading some of these comments and stuff. It seems as long as Legion is up in the air, it seems like a roadblock to a lot of these people.
I would agree with that.
To actually growing integration, because a lot of people are looking to, we want to see how Legion pans out. We want to see how this does, and, that and the other thing. But what we're not seeing is the fact that, heck, Rattati made a post about a roadmap for this year that included at the tail end of it, the phase 4, actually increasing Eve integration. So, but I don't even think that the Eve community may be even aware of that. It's
I-
like the
think you're right.
left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing at all.
Well, you make a very good point there, Kane, and that was sort of the other trend that you see is even those that were fairly positive towards the concept of Dust and Eve integration from a CSM a CSM standpoint. There were in fact quite a few comments of we don't really know what to think because is Legion a thing or is Dust still a thing? That was literally sort of the trend of questions, and it is. I think it just goes back to the information and transparency issue, and it would. Again, I think there's still a desire for this type of activity in the New Eden universe. So, like I said, guys, I did just want to bring that up very briefly. Hey, Zell, do you mind if I ask who your top 5 or 6 guys or folks were on your ballot, or did you want to exclude?
I totally don't remember.
I just figured you didn't want to get headshotted by your own alliance for not towing the party line.
I mean, Cyan was on my ballot. Steve Ronikin was on my ballot. I think Andy might have been on my ballot because he was goon, but I don't remember. I know I put Sugar Kyle on and Mike Azariah on my ballot. I think was Mike running this year? If he was running, I put him on my ballot. Then yes, he's on my ballot. Who else did I put? I know I think I put another incumbent or 2 on there. I didn't actually put in 14 names this time. I got bored.
I always put in 14. I just, but really after about the first 7, it probably doesn't matter.
I think I put like 6 or 7 in there, maybe 8.
Yeah, no, I had Mike Azariah, Chance Ravine, who is I think a potential breath of fresh air into Eve. Sugar Kyle, Steve Ronikin. Tor Bushido, he's the CEO of Code, so he's a high-sec pirate Gankmeister. And also Manfred Sidious from PL. So that was sort of the top block for my my ballot for what it's worth. And there's probably like a very small percentage of our listener base that actually knows who some of those folks are. But I do encourage people to somewhat pay attention to what's going on in Eve, and I would always encourage you to give it a shot, if only so that you understand a little bit more about the New Eden universe and sort of really the genetics of where Dust, potentially Legion, came from and where it actually might merge back into somewhere down the line.
And the CSM election is very important, I think, to Dust. And, there's always questions about how much influence, the CSM or CPM does or doesn't have. But, if we're looking at, a desire for future integration going forward, if we end up with, a CSM of, people who don't want it, then we're going to be up a creek. So, it's an important thing that the right candidates get in. It affects us too.
One of the things I talked about it on there's an Eve show that I was on probably about a month ago. The comment that I basically left them with was because they were generally asking me a lot of questions about how's Dust, what's going on. They had heard that there's like a resurgence of development, which was very surprising to them, but we've all been living that for several months now. So their first comment was, one, why aren't we hearing about it? And I was like, that's an interesting question. And then part 2 was, if you really want to see a growth in Dust or a resurgence in what is going on with Dust, then it probably actually needs to come from the Eve side, not from the Dust side. Because the more Eve players ask those questions and sort of ping about that, and the more the CSM is open to it or occasionally ask the probing question of CCP, that's probably where you're going to get more interaction. Because, and this is my personal opinion, I base this on purely my own observations. I think that CCP writ large, not the few stalwarts at CCP Shanghai, let me make that very clear, but I think they sort of don't really care what happens to the quote-unquote Dust community. I think guys like Rattati, I think guys like Logibro, I think probably, Frame, probably Rouge, I think they do care about what happens to the Dust community, but from a corporative standpoint, I'm not really sure they do. But when they hear, so I think our feedback as a player base can quickly get discounted, or it basically terminates with Rattati, and he takes care of whatever's going on, and the rest of CCP is none the wiser. But when these type of things come up from the Eve side, it probably has a bigger ripple, or it could potentially have a bigger impact in a positive sense, down the road for us.
I agree. I think that the biggest thing is I would like to see more support from Eve players and CCP Iceland on Dust stuff. I think that it is, you think about it, and in the larger portion of their player base, and their, I assume, primary income source is saying a certain thing. That's what they're going to listen to.
I would totally agree with that.
Well, I think on the issue, though, I think the gaining that support, as long as Dust doesn't have a clear-cut future, is going to be difficult, because that's a hurdle that needs to be overcome. And it's kind of an unanswered question that just kind of hangs in the air that everyone's thinking about that never actually has been resolved from CCP side anyways.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of again, that's a trending comment that I get from fellow Eve players, is they don't really know what to think about Dust, because there's probably a large chunk of them that think Dust has been turned off already, or that it's there's like some server that's barely warmed up in the corner that's chugging along for a few people playing. All right, well, we did cover that a little bit. So what I want to do, guys, is kind of dive in a little bit to the Hotfix Echo discussion. If we can transition over to that. What I'd like to do is briefly turn it over to our CPM bros to kind of run down a couple of the, or at least sort of the big ticket items going on in the hotfix, and we can kind of kick that around for a minute in terms of what we think is going to be in the hotfix based on Rattati's post. And then I would like to transition to kind of part two of the discussion, which is what other things did we really want in Hotfix Echo, or what might have we been expecting that didn't quite make the cut so far. So with that, you mind if I turn it over to the CSM guys, if you can kind of give us a quick rundown?
I brought the post up, so I guess I'll do a quick read off.
Did you say CSM guys?
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's okay.
I'm not. We don't have any CSM guys on here right now.
So basically, the reason I punted this to you guys was because I'm trying to drink my cup of tea, and I don't have another hand with which I can switch my screen to see the Dust post that I had up, and I was really hoping one of you had it up.
Okay, one of the first things that that Rattati's bringing in is new starter loadouts. This is supposed to help out the new players. Many of our current loadouts are not the greatest thing in helping preview the game, and some are not effective either. He also, the biggest controversial change that has popped up so far from it, though, was the removal of the sniper role from the starter lineup.
Yeah, I guess my opening thoughts on that were anything that helps out the, kind of the basic noob fits like that, probably a good thing. I was a little surprised at the removing the sniper piece, because basically you generally want to, that's sort of a staple of first-person shooter or like shooter-style games, is some sort of sniper role. So I was a little surprised by that. But I think the logic he gave was he wanted to get people more involved in, like action-oriented combat.
And that's not a bad goal to. It's a very good, well-intentioned role, but people are eventually going to find out about all the other weapons as they play along. So they'll eventually get used to the idea of being recon, being the scout inside the battlefield, before they pick up the more advanced roles of being a sniper, providing support. Hopefully, it should make the next generation of snipers a little bit more active, so to say, less afraid to be in the midst of the whole fighting.
So I only have to ask this question because of the way that was framed. Is, snipers by their nature aren't hooking and jabbing 50 meters away from other targets. I acknowledge that I think exactly what he said is we are removing the sniper loadout and replacing it with the recon loadout. The sniper has proven to be far too passive as a role for new players, and we want to encourage them to get into the thick of it. Now, this may be a little bit of, a tinge of bitter vetness in there. Well, it's probably not even bitter vet. It's literally just a little bit of reality. The more you encourage those guys to get into the middle of the fighting, I wonder how many of them are going to stay playing the game, period. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't encourage them, but just the logic of that statement, I'm not sure I follow. In that, generally, most of those players are going to probably get in, be in the thick of combat, and they're going to get smoked very quickly. And I also point out that quite a few people come into first-person shooter games that play snipers across multiple first-person shooter games, and that's something they would be interested in doing just from Jump Street. And I guess I'm not sure why we wouldn't have added the recon loadout and then just retained the sniper loadout. Does that make sense?
Except the snipers lose matches, especially the starter snipers.
Well, I got news for you. Like the more these guys that they give like a militia AR and then send into the meat grinder, I'm all about that too, because that's going to lose you matches on clone count too. Okay, so we've talked about that, and it also looks like they're going to do a little bit of work on the basic medium frames as well, I think.
They're increasing the fitting capacity on them, aren't they?
I think so, and
Yes.
I think it's tiered though, right?
It's still tiered, but they're using the same formula that helped divert the more advanced suits on previous balances when it came to fitting. Is basically they are taking what's usually fitted in those slots and using that as the stats weight to determine how much fitting based on your slot layout, so to say.
Okay, now that actually makes a lot of sense. It also looks like they're gonna, let's see, coupled with the fact that we reduced the cost of basic drop suits. Oh, okay. Oh, that's interesting. I mean, I think they're trying to be a little bit more friendly to younger players, which I think is probably a good thing, writ large. Again, like some of it I question. Like anytime that you devalue like a role, like with the sniper piece, which by the way, for the record, like I have not a single SP in anything sniper related. I know enough about first person shooter games to know that a lot of people like that role and they play it because they like it. Whether you think it's passive or active or not. So it just kind of surprised me.
But they can't. I mean, you can fit a militia sniper on day one. You can buy it. You can buy a militia sniper rifle in the market. I mean, there's a ton of weapons and suits that aren't available in the starter fits, and so the goal is having kind of the ones. I honestly think the mentality there is maybe that sniping isn't. It doesn't get you really all that excited about the game as much as actually running in and getting in there.
Okay, I'll buy that. I think, but again, I think it's about player choice more than anything.
The other thing with sniping, though, is that it's not a very high war point roll in this game, the way the game's set up. The recon roll with the uplink and that sort of thing. It's something that probably is going to get you more. It's more likely to get you war points, make you hit that 150 mark, make you advance and progress faster, probably through the game too. Mm-hmm. So having that as a fallback point rather than a fallback point being something that is going to take you away from the fight, make it to maybe you get a kill, maybe you don't get a kill, but you're not actually going to be advancing the battle really. I mean, if you having a role in which everyone has a fallback to where it's sneaky and you're dropping uplinks everywhere, I think the idea is to also dramatically encourage the number of uplinks that we see from randoms and from newer players.
Without really, because we're totally trying to read people's mind right now, or the CPM guys just don't want to talk about it. They one of the two, or can't. But the bottom line is, like, I don't think you're going to be able to, I've seen no indication whatsoever that CCP is interested in more uplinks. The only thing I've heard coming out of them or felt coming out of them is, they think uplinks should just go away or be so expensive to use and so difficult to use.
I want to see uplinks go away. I don't like uplinks very much.
Yeah, I would like to say that I do not want to see uplinks go away because I do like them very much.
So this is my point. Is like it's literally just it's shades of variation, and I think anything that you do with a starter suit, the reality is that thing will pop like a balloon no matter what. I think that's just the reality of it. So it's kind of academic, engaging on it. I did actually want to transition to some of the things we're talking about with movement in terms of adjusting the back pedal speed and some of the other things. Does that also affect strafing, or is that literally just pure forward and backward speed?
Back pedal is backpedaling, so that's its own movement set. Strafing is another movement set, so there are two independent ones.
Okay, so We're
If
gonna.
if you're going back into the left, though, it would be slower, correct?
Just going backwards. It'll be slower than strafing. Strafing's a little bit slightly faster. If I recall right, it's at 90% of walk speed. Well, it's called run speed. I keep calling it walk speed because you're not sprinting.
What I'm just wondering is about certain strafe patterns. Like you have the figure 8 and the circle strafe, and I just wonder if the back end of those strafe patterns, so like the back end of the circle, the back end of the figure 8, are those going to end up actually being slower as a result? I'm just a little.
It should be going slower when you're backing up. So yes, at the curvatures of going back on the figure 8 part. Now the going forward part should be a little bit faster than the going back part.
See, my concern is that with just reducing the speed of straight back pedaling, we're going to kind of flatten the dynamics of strafe patterns in the game to basically only being left, right, left, right, left, right.
Well, if they add inertia, then I can actually get even more dicier.
I still think that it'd be nice if they had some form of inertia on that, just because it's, like the changes they made in the game, the progressive changes, they just continue to feel like, like more of a cartoony, not even Call of Duty, but just a more cartoony shooter, not a, semi-practical sci-fi, team-based shooter.
Well, I mean, over the course of Uprising, left-right strafe speed was actually doubled. There was actually a bug in the game in which a keyboard was able to get double input. It'd be basically the same as if you had two DS3s going left at the same time. When they fixed it, the end result was that everybody got the double input going left and right. So strafe speed overall increased dramatically.
Okay.
Yeah, another one of those hilarious missteps we had in the past.
Well, let's see. As we click down the list, looks like they're pulling out the Glente Research Facility. Now that's only for PCs, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that is only for PC because of the frame rates per second drop involved with that map socket alone. So
it's the lag facility. We joke in PC that they're studying tie-dye at the facility.
That's probably accurate. So let's see. Now we're getting into some of the more, I guess, divisive topics in terms of the light weapon or the handheld weapons. Let's see. Plasma cannon looks like it's getting a pretty major damage buff. That should make Pokey happy, right?
Wait, what's getting a damage buff?
Plasma cannon's 13%.
Oh yes, 13%. It'll bring it a little more in line with what the swarms are currently doing. So I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, that's pretty legit. The Assault Scrambler getting a pretty serious buff. I think that's like 14%.
15% for standard, 17% for advanced, and a 15% buff for proto.
This is not gonna go well if they do that.
Yeah, it seems like overkill to me.
We'll have to see how it goes. All I know is that my standard assault scrambler rifle is now going to be actually better than my current proto one.
Yes,
That
by a long margin. I think this is a horribly bad idea.
I think it's getting overbuffed too.
We'll see how it goes, I guess.
This is the danger of only looking at numbers and not understanding practical application in game. This is what worries me when I see sort of, I would say, 75-80% of what Rattati puts out, I think is generally a really sharp way of approaching things in terms of problem solving. But that small minority of things usually revolves around, wow, my numbers say that more people should be using something, or I wonder why not. Well, let's give it 15% more damage at the proto level. What? That blows my mind.
Amar Victor.
Yeah, I mean, I played with it a little bit, not a ton, but enough. And I was like, okay, yeah, maybe this feels a little underpowered, but 15% is way beyond anything I would expect for a buff.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. So just for a frame of reference, the first weapon that I actually skilled into was the Scrambler. That's all I ran. I never had a single point. Other than I had like a bare minimum of points in the AR, but I used most of those points for like drop suit upgrades and all my Logi stuff generally first. And I really didn't upgrade any weapons until very late. For a while since after I started playing. So the first weapon that I actually really sunk a lot of SP into was the Assault Scrambler. And that thing works. It worked pretty well. It's got I love the sight on it, like the little non-zoom reflex scope. Huge fan of that. The biggest problem it is it's just a resource-hungry weapon compared to other ones. And it does have like some kind of wonky mechanics that like it looks like it's a lot of recoil and jumping around, but the actual shots are pretty spot on. There's not a lot of dispersion in them. So it always served me very well. And then I transitioned from the ASCAR over to the rail rifle the day that came out. But that thing's not a bad weapon. Like it's just not used because I just think there's a lot of other good weapons out there. But when you put that level of damage on it, correct me if I'm wrong, that'll be like the highest in DPS of any rifle, right?
It'll be right on par with the Duval. I think just a little bit higher.
I think it's higher than the Duval.
It is higher from what I was saying. It's actually more than the plasma rifle, which makes no sense at all since it's supposed to be balanced against range, and it's longer range than the AR.
I mean, it's arguably more user-friendly in that it's got a better aim-down sight mechanic. You're not going to overheat the thing. They would have to dramatically tune up the heat before that becomes a problem, even without using an Amar assault suit. And it's going to hit harder at longer ranges. Like that's, I don't know, man. It's pretty sketchy.
Yeah, Catmark actually just linked something in the Skype channel, and it looks like post change, it's going to be the Assault Scrambler DPS, just plain DPS, will be 494, and a Duval's DPS will be 453.
That's okay.
It's also going to do apparently 3,137 damage before overheating.
It's pretty sketchy.
I haven't checked his math, obviously, but if it's correct, that's a little insane. Like maybe like a 5% buff I could see, maybe a little bit more, but 15 is nuts for any sort of buff to a weapon.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that came from. That's I don't know. So I guess now, any other thoughts on the ASCAR, by the way?
It's going to be incredibly entertaining.
I feel bad for the Caldari guys out there, is all I can say.
Yeah, I get near insta-popped by like a Visium as it is. Like, now you got to worry about these damn things.
I think one of the things is the Mimitar assault is definitely becoming more prevalent in the meta. So it'll be interesting to see how, if the Assault Scrambler rifle becomes more popular, how that might actually start dampening down that increase in meta for the Mimitar, or maybe just shifting Mimitar assaults to more armor tanking in their hybrid setups.
I could see that. I could see them wanting to do more of a hybrid tank or an armor tank on the Min assault because speed kills right now. I think, if not, it's certainly not the most divisive, but an equally, I guess controversial one is the discussion about what they want to do with the HMGs. Like I am not a professional heavy. I do play one, every once in a while when I'm not lodging and stuff. But these are some pretty serious changes that they're looking at laying out on the HMG, particularly in terms of the kind of the autocannon like function for the assault HMG. I'm just curious what your guys' thoughts are on this.
I'm gonna have lots of fun.
I am sharing breaking stuff's opinions on these HMGs that they're not going to solve the problem in the long run. It's just going to make things probably worse until we get to a model that they're more closer to a suppression type weapon instead of the kill everything in CQC weapon.
Yeah.
Well, so a couple things on that. One, we're driven down the discussion. I think a lot of people look at the HMG primarily because it's hard to divorce the weapon from the suit because you must be using the suit to use the weapon. It really goes down to what do we think the root thing is that we want to solve here. And what I've always felt is that the HMG, like other weapons, is a victim of either not understanding its design or not accounting for its design within the scheme of play or the design of the game, or perhaps they did it very well and other parts of the game just don't keep up. I'm not entirely sure where my head's at on that one, but this just feels like if there's like the HMG is a great example of something that is on a continual cyclic nerf buff, nerf buff, nerf buff. And what I find fascinating is that we're literally talking about going back to solutions that we saw, patches ago that people were clamoring to get changed to what it is now.
Yeah.
And that's what blows my mind on all this. And that is, if nothing else, this is a good indicator of one of my true deep frustrations with the game is this just continual, fairly rapid pace of change for seemingly the sake of change. Now, I think there's a lot of things going on here with the HMG piece. One is it really the machine gun that is the problem? Is it the suit is the problem? Or is it the design of the game and how the game is structured that lends people to wanting to use HMGs and suits? Because you can't change the maps, because that's really what I think drives a lot of this.
Mm-hmm.
You want to change the suit, or do you want to change the machine gun? And people are bitching about heavies. Now, the one point I do agree with Breaking On, which I don't agree with him on a lot of things, is I think if you literally deleted the HMG from the game, you'd probably still have a lot of heavy suits with rifles, and that's okay too, in my opinion. But I'm not really sure what they're trying to accomplish with this change to the HMGs.
The interesting thing I see about it is that there's been a couple camps, two really large, two pretty polarized camps in dealing with the HMG. One wanting to shorten range, lower DPS. One wanting to, lower DPS but increase the range. And I think with what's being introduced between the Assault HMG and the nerfs coming to the Burst and the standard HMG, you're almost getting a test bed of those two ideas. With the Assault HMG being kind of a lower DPS, longer range. The interesting thing about it is the 100% efficacy against vehicles. And then you have the other HMGs, which are, bringing the range even closer, even more into CQC, in addition to also a range. In addition to their range nerf, also a damage nerf as well. It's going to be curious to see which kind of philosophy holds out in terms of what people actually use, what makes it prevalent. I have to agree though about the map design issue. I think if you make something that is a king in CQC, and the most important part of the game for objective game modes is defending objectives in CQC, it seems like that's going to become the most prevalent suit in a lot of cases.
Well, I think Jay brings up a good point as well, is that we've seen a lot of these changes are very similar changes in the past, and it's like, if you've gone through so many iterations of the HMG to a point where you're changing the stuff you changed in the first place, it sounds like there's more of a fundamental problem with the role and what it's supposed to be doing, and less so with the stats. And I think that's kind of where we're at, that it's like, okay, yeah, you can tweak the DPS, you can tweak the range, you can change the heat buildup, but nothing seems to work. So I think that in general, we might have to divorce ourselves from what our current perception of what the HMG is supposed to do or how it's supposed to perform, and kind of look at it from a less specific number standpoint, more of how do we want this thing to actually play in game.
And this harkens back to the whole AV versus HAVs discussion. I mean, that's been going back and forth for such a long time too, primarily because HAVs are in the same box as the HMG. They were brought into this game with really no sense or wholeness to where it needs to be. So you got a weapon here that you have an idea. It sounds cool. It does cool things. But what is it supposed to do in reflection of everybody else and everything else in the game? And that question still is, to this day, mostly unanswered. And unfortunately, the current answer that players like about it is murder everything that's in 5 feet in front of me.
Well, yeah, but I mean, here's again, this is the one where, like, I struggle. One of the reasons I liked that I really, really got involved in Dust, years ago, was that there felt like, clearly it is a sci-fi shooter, acknowledged, okay, but there was also at least some layer of plausible reality, or at least a plausible reality laid over on how all these combat systems would work. Like, and we're at the point now that we're basically making up fucking like, Looney Tunes physics to to cover for poor game design. And here's where I really think we're at on not just the HMG but a lot of things. I think what Rat is doing is he is trying to quote unquote balance the game, but he's doing it with one hand tied behind his back because he's a smart guy. Obviously, he probably knows there's some fundamental design issues with a lot of things, but he can't change them. What he can change are, ultimately is going to be spreadsheet stuff. He can't change the core components of the game very easily, or he could, but it eats up, a fair allotment of what he's got to work with in terms of how he's budgeting out time and resources. So, to me, the HMG, it's like one of those where, yes, if something's in front, like, again, this is the part where you have to acknowledge it. Yeah, it's a sci-fi shooter and all that. It's a game. I got it. But just think about what you're saying. You're talking about even if it was using the exact same bullet that, or the projectile that came out of a combat rifle, it's firing it at a much faster rate. And it's literally designed to just chainsaw through stuff. That's what they really do, like for real. And unless they're mounted on a vehicle, by the way, they're not very accurate, like on a stabilized platform. So I could actually see a scenario where it could have serious recoil because it really doesn't have recoil. It actually gets more accurate when the longer you fire it. Like, what if they went the other way around? What if it had dramatic recoil? That would be pretty legit. You're an unstabilized platform as a person, even in a power armor suit walking around with the damn thing. Like, do that to it, but then increase the range where you could legitimately engage like vehicles at some legitimate range. But you've got some opportunities in there if you're contending with a heavy, even in CQC. And again, if they don't want to use that in CQC because it's not tenable in tight quarters and whatever, great. Let them swap over to like an assault rail rifle or an AR or whatever and just deal with them. And that's okay. But I'm not really sure if we're trying to solve an HMG problem, or if we're trying to solve a Sentinel problem, or what we're really trying to do is solve like not a bad, but like a monostylistic map design problem by messing around with HMGs and Sentinels.
Well, you have to also look at the fact that, like you said, you can't change the maps. The maps are what they are, and the fact remains that close quarters is the primary area surrounding objectives, and that's what you're going for. So you're going to be engaging in close quarters most of the time. And I think some of the issues you're running into is, okay, it's a Sentinel. It's a heavy. It should take a lot of hits. It should be, good at being in a stationary position, defending. That makes sense. Okay. And you have the HMG, and well, okay, it's a machine, it's a heavy machine gun. It should, like you said, chainsaw through everything in front of it. That makes sense. But the things you put those together, it's got more HP than everything in the game, and it can do more damage than everything in the game. Obviously, it's going to be the most prevalent thing because you're forced to engage it. And I think it's almost too good. The Sentinel with the HMG is almost too good at doing all of those things. And I think you have to take something away from it. Otherwise, it's going to continue to dominate most of the time because you're forced to engage it in its absolute, optimal range and environment.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the point is that what we're doing basically is we're turning. Yeah, I think in a weird way, and this goes against what I've said previously about taking away content and tools in the game, but I honestly think it would be a better solution to remove the HMG, period, if this is the direction we're going, and then just deal with the Sentinel suit and a light weapon. That's my honest opinion.
I don't know. You look at the heavy. You have to look at how we're gonna really have to look at how the autocannon kind of concept plays out, because it's a completely different. The way they keep on approaching the HMG, it's always been kind of staying in this sort of this CQC, high DPS, high deep clip, lots of bullets thrown out kind of way, and it's not really changed much, from that. And I think what they're doing with the assault HMG is definitely a fairly large departure from that. And I think we'll have to see how it actually plays out live on the servers.
Have you guys looked at the numbers for the assault HMG, Butler, the proposed numbers, by?
Yes.
So
it
what was
does not look good for anti-infantry due to the heat and clip and,
so
reload's killer.
let me ask you guys a question. Like, so if I think we've all looked at them, so I want to play the lightning round game for 1 second here with one question. I'm going to ask everybody, what was the first thing that came to your mind, like one, 2 words, kind of thing, when you first saw those stats? Iron Wolf?
Needs more range.
Okay. Kane?
It sounds like a light machine gun with not enough range.
Pokey?
It's got to be the range. 63 meters is not long enough for an AV weapon.
Okay. SMB?
Just made me think of just all the general changes in the game, man.
Okay. Soraya?
No comment.
That means you didn't look at the numbers. So the first thing I thought of was, wow, that looks like the new breach AR / rail rifle that everybody used to bitch about.
Yeah, that too. It's lower fire rate, but it's going to hit like a truck.
Yep. I'm looking at how it lays out at the proto level. So it's 634 DPS. And damage per shot is
616.
61.6, right?
It's 616 total DPS.
It says new damage, 61.6.
That's
new
per
DPS.
bullet.
Yeah, it's per round, right?
Yeah, and then DPS is 616.
So think about that. That's going to hit significantly harder than the old rail rifle before the nerf cycle started on that thing, and it's going to have a higher rate of fire. And what's the range on it?
The range is it's effective is 63.75, which if you go dig back through some other numbers where they show optimals, it looks like the optimal will be just under 40 meters.
Okay, so basically I just handed somebody a breach AR on double steroids. That's not going to work. I'm just my opinion is that's not going to solve a lot of problems. If we're beefing about them being powerful in CQC, because if we don't see this as a problem, then why in the hell did we start? What was the point of going through the massive nerf cycle on things like the rail rifle?
Well, I think you're taking a weapon which is fundamentally flawed in its general concept and trying to repurpose it to be an AV weapon without making it ridiculous against infantry, and I think that it's going to cause issues. That's why I was kind of meh about the whole assault heavy machine gun being like an autocannon. I think it's getting more problematic than it's worth.
Yeah, I'm just imagining, if we think Sentinels are bad now, I'm imagining in some kind of CQC environment where you have to get within, 30 meters of a Sentinel who's guarding a point or a doorway or a hallway or an overwatch position. They're going to be absolutely slashing people with that assault HMG now.
Well, and I think when I say too short range, I think it's too short range for an AV weapon, but I think it's gonna mulch things for infantry, and I don't like these hybrid. Let's try to make it be both, because I don't think you can properly balance it. I mean, the only reason you can get away with the plasma cannon is that it's damn hard to hit somebody with it, infantrymen with it, and so that works. But everything else, we had a time when the swarms could be both, and that was problematic. So they had to remove the dumbfire because it was such a pain in the ass.
Yeah, no, like I said, guys, we can kind of move on. We got a lot of other things to touch on, but yeah, the HMG that struck me, that was literally the first thing that struck me is a variation of that pokey, is that I appreciate that they're adding some sort of AV tool. I thought it was conceptually a good idea, but again, the practical nature of it is going to be pretty tough. I can see HMGs and ASCARs very quickly, at least when these things drop, starting to be fairly prevalent for a while. Any other thoughts on the light weapons real quick before we move on? Nope. Okay. Looks like they're adjusting the cloak fields a little bit, so they're a little bit easier to fit in terms of the standard and the advanced drop suits. So I think that's probably a net win. That's okay. Cloak scouts really aren't nearly the problem they used to be since they've been tuning on those things for a while. I don't run scout enough to really comment on it one way or the other. I did notice that there's a change to the deployables. So it looks like they're increasing the carried amount of all deployable equipment by 3. Since bandwidth has reduced individual spam of equipment, allowing simpler redistribution, blah, 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 blah. We have, however, also a need to reduce the efficacy of drop uplinks. And we're reducing the number of spawns by 50%. So the way I'm reading this is that when they say all deployables, what do they mean by that?
They mean
all.
Have a list. It says nanohives, uplinks, and proxy explosives.
Okay.
If that includes REs, that's going to be an issue. But as far as I can tell, that it does not.
So, if I'm carrying Ishikone gauged hives and I can put down 4 now, I can put down 7.
No, you cannot.
The amount you're putting down is the same.
Yeah, yeah, I got that. But my carried is now 7, not 4. That's what you're getting at.
No, 12.
What?
They're multiplying by 3 or adding 3?
3 times 3x.
Right, but
Whoa.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. 3x?
3x.
Are you sure about that?
Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to lead to crazy nade spam like we've never seen before.
Holy shit! Yes.
Because you're going to post up. You're going to post up in a position, drop a hive, throw grenades, advance after you kill
I'm
people.
a huge fan of this. Now I'm dual wielding a mass driver. It's called a core locust grenade. Fucking awesome.
That's gonna be bad.
I think now would be the opportunity, especially if there's such a need to increase the reserve of equipment, because apparently one of the issues is Logis and various other suits having to go back to supply depots to get more equipment after they get used up.
I mean, okay,
I think what you're going to end up needing to do is turn off grenade resupply and also RE resupply at hives, like it used to be at one point in the game.
Well, this goes back to my comment earlier about I don't play this to have it be like some form of Animaniacs or Looney Tunes. I mean, there's got to be some sort of logic to how we're doing this, because we've okay, yeah. This will be interesting to see how this works out. I'm
the thing that I'm more worried about is the uplinks being tripled, because yes, they're going to be reducing their spawn. They're going to be cutting their spawns in half, but you're increasing carrying number by 3 times. So total number of spawns per equipment slot is actually going to be increasing. So
no, well, I don't know, because what is when it says reduce the efficacy of drop uplinks? What does that mean?
So that means 10 spawns becomes 5 spawns. 20 spawns becons 10 spawns.
No. So the way I read this, it says a need to reduce the efficacy and are reducing the spawns per uplink. So what that tells me is that they're going to be slower per spawn and there's going to be less spawns. Is that not accurate?
No, that's inaccurate. It's literally just spawns, not speed.
Okay, well, it says and, not that. Yeah, should go to the spreadsheet. That probably tells me.
The
spreadsheet says times 3 and max spawns times 0.5. So
yeah, I'm looking at the spreadsheet. That's why wording may be confusing, but the numbers are pretty black and white.
Oh, and they're also decreasing the bandwidth for proxies. Oh, that's proxies. Okay, that's not as bad. I thought they're reducing remote bandwidth by a factor of 2. I mean, I could buy having an extra nanohive or 2 like that. That would be kind of nice. Like 2 feels a little strict. I use the cheap one, so having 3 would be nice. But times 3, I have 6 of them. That's kind of nuts.
Well, not only that, you think about you're going to have 3 compact nanohives now.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
There's going to be, I mean, I can see the compact nanohive actually becoming one of the most commonly used hives on the field, because before, having just one of them was a detriment, but having a hive that can rep you and give you ammo and it's just personal for you and all that kind of stuff, I could see that being very common after this. The other interesting thing is going to be triage hives. I mean, because you're just going to be able to post up, drop one of those suckers, and if it gets blown up, you're going to have a large reserve to then drop more. Honestly, I don't see a huge issue. The only issue I really see with the nanohive stuff is the potential remote explosive and grenade spam that's going to result as become from it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll buy the change. It's just the degree at which it's being increased seems insane.
I think that, now I'm looking at this from a logi standpoint. So it does mean I need to be I can be a little bit less careful with when I put equipment down. Now the other thing is that what it devalues is equipment destruction. That's actually how I view it, is, counter to logi play, if you are working from a deployable standpoint, is like, a couple a well-placed flux grenade can wipe out like a defensive position's, like sustainment capability. This kind of devalues that, or it starts to really degrade your ability to work that over. Because if you think about it, when guys are hard pointed in, they've got hives and uplinks around and all that kind of stuff. And if you can't break them fairly quickly, one of the things you really start looking at is like, I got to get rid of all of the stuff that's keeping them alive, which is some of those repping hives. It's, probably the additional uplinks that are hidden in corners, all that kind of shit. So this does, from that aspect, I'm kind of with Pokey on this. Again, I think the general trend I'm seeing is, wow, they're increasing that by a lot.
Well, and not only that, you mentioned the flux grenade. Now take it to the larger degree, a large EMP flux, that designed to clear out a whole area of uplinks. Now, I know a lot of people will hold an uplink in reserve, but with this many,
you don't have to
uplinks. You can just digging people out of an entrenched position, which has always been kind of an issue in Dust in a lot of cases. Like, whoever gets entrenched first is generally going to win. It's very difficult to unseat people in a lot of situations.
Yeah, I would agree. I think this actually has made it a little tougher. If they were going to do this, I would have expected something like there would be a reduction of, like, for example, like for nano hives, I would have expected something along the order of what they're doing with the uplinks, where you can carry more, but there's less nanites in the hive. But this is pretty powerful. I don't know if it's a buff. I don't think it's a buff or a nerf. I think it's just different. I'm not real sold it's a great idea right now. SMB, what are your thoughts on this, man? I'm curious. You look at this from the same perspective I do, I think.
There was a time where I was a big supporter of more max carried, with lower efficacy. And I'm not saying that I'm not anymore, but, with bandwidth now, it sort of changes the dynamic of things a little bit. I'm kind of in a wait and see mode with this one, to be perfectly honest. Like, I think it's going to be cool in some ways because it doesn't put lodges in a position where they have to constantly go back to the resupply all the time. But, like you guys have pointed out, what does that mean for when you're trying to disentrench someone from a spot? And, what does it mean for the big orbital strike, the flux orbital strike? There's just a lot of unknowns, and I'm cautious, but at the same time, like on the surface, it kind of looks cool to me, and I'm interested to see how it plays out. But I could see this being something that we would have to walk back if it doesn't work out right.
Yeah, I think I kind of echo that. As like, this may turn out to be perfectly fine, but I can. It's just I think there's enough about it that makes me a little bit concerned on that. In terms of the second, third order effects. And like I said, actually, now that you mention that, if you implemented this with like less efficacy per unit of deployment, like per hive or whatever, like this looks like almost a good alternate course of action than bandwidth. It looks like something you should have done, either this or bandwidth, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And in fact, when we had this proposal sort of knocking around prior to bandwidth, that's exactly sort of the way that it was going. It was more max carried, and you had less nanites in your nano hives, and your uplinks produced far fewer spawns, even less than half. And it was supposed to create a situation where logi work, in terms of laying uplinks and laying nano hives, was going to more resemble the active sort of play that you got from like injectors and from rep tools and from scanners.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It was trying to make it just a more active sort of play style. You were going to constantly have to replace hives, constantly have to put up uplinks. And now that we have bandwidth and now this is coming, I'm sort of still trying to wrap my head around it. I'm not sure how it's going to play out. So it'll be interesting to see. But like I said, I'm pretty cautious on it.
Okay. All right. That's fair enough. Let me kind of slide down here. One that caught my eye. Myofibril simulants are going to increase jumping capability, which I think is probably a good idea. It makes a lot of logical sense. So I don't really have a big issue with that. The one thing that caught me was, the comment about like, hey, like all you sentinels that can't jump over like a 3-inch curb, you can now if you fit a module. Why not just give the sentinels a little bit more fucking vertical leap, maybe? Just saying.
Yeah, I think the idea of the jump height for the Myro is fine, but yeah, the jump height on sentinels is, even commandos to some extent, is ridiculous. That I can't get over a 6-inch step because I have an armor plate on is just stupid.
Yeah, I'm not asking to be able to dunk a basketball in my fat suit, but I think allowing you to navigate over a curb would be pretty cool without having to have a module.
Yeah,
like the reduced jump height, I can get that, but when it impairs basic movement on a lot of terrain, that's a problem. I'm not, like you said, I'm not asking to hurdle over railings here, but just basic movement around the map. Like even just getting over maybe the lip of like a container can be difficult sometimes, and that's just a bad design at that point.
Yeah, I mean, because we don't have some sort of vaulting mechanic or basic or
I wish,
or basically anything like that, something above knee height that you can get over, not even fluidly, but like, somewhat in a basic manner. I mean, that's just I think the only thing we have to work with basically is jumping, which is a really, really tough thing to work around, I think, if you're not careful with it. Let's see, moving on down, turrets, small turrets, they're going to adjust the blaster small turret again for the 15th time since I've been playing Dust, in a attempt to make it the king of anti-infantry small turrets again for the 15th time I've seen it touched in Dust. Interesting. So reduced dispersion, use the same mechanic the HMG has, where the longer you fire it, the more accurate it becomes, which, by the way, is an absolutely fucking mind-boggling mechanic to me. I have no idea why we would even entertain that, but interesting. So they're going to make it a little bit more like the HMG. Okay, well, we'll see how that works out for them.
Yeah, because the HMG is working so perfectly well right now, right?
Well, look, it sounds like, to me when I read that, it reminds me of how blaster turrets were back in like Chromazone and stuff like that.
Anybody ever notice how often we say that? Like, wow, this change sounds exactly like patch 1 point whatever. Or like, hey, you remember that time back in X? This is amazing. And I'm honestly not poking at him for that. I mean, I think that, like I said, I have truly come to the realization that I believe that CCP Rattati is doing everything he can with the tools that he has, but he can't overcome certain just fundamental components of the game he's got to work around. But again, why was the idea that you should get more accurate with a heavy weapon the longer you fire it? Like, where did that come from? Them
trying to be different. I think that's really the only reason, is that they wanted to get a minigun that performed differently than what you would typically see in another game.
I mean, I would actually like it if the longer you fired it, the more stable a rail rifle became. Like, holy shit!
That would actually make sense.
If that's how we're using inverse dispersion or inverse recoil, which is kind of a separate thing, but just like, I've never understood that mechanic for the HMG, by the way, and I certainly don't understand it for the small blaster turret. I do appreciate that he's trying to really give the small blaster something to do, though. Large turrets. Let's see. I'm not even going to touch this one, Pokey. I'm going to turn over I should turn over all vehicle shit from turrets and vehicles to you right now. So if you can kind of help walk us through this, because I really don't want to misstep here, because I just don't know enough about vehicles to really, give you a hazard guess.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just touch on the really basic stuff. It looks like that basically what they're doing is, like, for large blasters, DPS is going up by quite a bit to make it a lot more effective in close quarters. They're dropping the fire rate down a little bit. So it's obviously firing slower, which I think might be a way to curb the anti-infantry.
I hope so.
But
They're
also
really
keep in
good
mind,
at it. and it
well,
sucks.
they're adding an active module which allows them to decrease their dispersion buildup temporarily. That's coming, I believe, in Echo as well. Magazine size is being drastically reduced from 205 to 75, so it's going to have to reload a lot more often, and the heat buildup's going up by about 33%, so it's going to overheat. I forget what I calculated out to, but a little bit quicker than it was before. But yeah, you're basically going to see mostly an increase in DPS overall for the large blaster. Large railgun, not a lot of changes. Bigger magazine size. It's going to overheat in 3 shots instead of 4. A lot more max ammo in reserve, and a bit longer reload time from 8 to 10 seconds. The large missiles, they aren't changing the DPS. They're basically effectively making it so it fires like it empties. Because the way large missiles currently work is you basically drop all 12 missiles into a tank and, hopefully blow it up before you have to reload. What they're doing is basically making it so it takes twice as long to do that. I'm not a big fan of it. I think there's a fundamental problem with the large missiles, but that's what they're doing for Echo, is making it so it fires slower. And increasing the reload for some reason. I'm not sure why, but that's about it for large turrets.
Okay, cool. And it looks like there's a lot of adjustments to the modules. I notice there's a shield regulator for vehicles now, which could be kind of interesting. Let's see, active heatsink, and then the dispersion stabilizer you noted. I think that might be kind of interesting, the shield regulator. That might actually, I'm not sure how that'll play out, but it's anything that gives you more equities in terms of, or more things to play with as a vehicle operator. This, I guess, strikes me as a good thing, right?
Well, I mean, we lost a ton of modules when they did the whole rework. I mean, it pretty much stripped vehicles down to the bare bones, and we're getting a couple of those back. Like the heat sinks was an old favorite of mine. The regulators are nice because on the Caldari one, its normal recharge delay is 4 seconds. If you put 2 proto regulators on, it drops down to about 1.8 seconds. And why that's important is that that's actually a shorter delay than a lot of refire on AV weapons. So even a maxed out like plasma cannon, which is typically the best thing you use against a Gunlaji right now, is on a commando is 2.22 seconds, which means that you're going to be starting your recharge in between plasma cannon shots. So I think that putting regulators in your lows is going to be actually very valuable to shield tankers, because they can regenerate even under fire effectively from AV weapons. And I think a large part of why they wanted to do that is that basically vehicles have the opposite problem of infantry, where infantry have a lack of high slot modules. Vehicles have a severe lack of low slot modules. And for shield tanks, there wasn't much to put in your lows that was useful besides armor plates, and they wanted to move away from that. So I think giving regulators in the low slots will encourage actual shield module usage instead of hybrid tanking, which I think is a good thing overall.
Okay. Now, they actually did touch LAVs, which I was not expecting. So it looks like there's quite a few things going on there. I'm not entirely sure. I see kind of what the end state or the end division is going to be for the LAVs. But it looks like they're reducing their effective tank, and they're increasing, I think, their fitting capacities with the way it reads.
So they're cutting their HP in half. Just straight across the board. So, you're ending up with, on a Mathana, you're ending up with 325 shield, 1225 armor versus 650 to 2450. And on the Saga, you got 1200 shield, 900 armor. That's just getting cut straight in half to 600, 450.
Why would they do that?
Well, okay, basically it was the same mentality used in the HAV rebalance, is that they want to lower the base HP so that you're encouraged to actually put modules on your vehicles rather than, because I mean, like the Mathana could get over 3000 HP without any modules on it, which is kind of insane. So the idea is that if you use an unfit vehicle, it's going to be very easy to kill, and if you fit it, it's going to obviously be harder to kill. Now, I think that the LAVs in general need a full, pass in terms of, because I mean, for the HAVs, what they did is they dropped the base HP down, but then gave them additional slots to put more HP modules into. So again, making the base hull weaker and put more reliance on the modules. I think the same thing needs to happen to the LAVs, but this seems like what he's going for is like a quick we're going to do this and get to it done properly later by dropping the base HP and giving you more fitting. I don't think it should be the final solution, but I think that it's a stopgap for the time being, so I can't complain about it too much.
Well, and the other thing that is changing is the shield regen threshold is being lowered significantly. I think it's being lowered from 120 to 40. So that means that things like the Assault HMG will be able to stop shield regen, and in order to take out LAVs. And like the last thing was the scan distance is being doubled from 15 meters to 30 meters.
Okay. So, well, a quick question about that. Like when you fit an active scanner on like your LAV, does it increase your native active scans?
No.
Or is that a separate value?
It's actually a module that gives you an 80-meter radius scan, and at the proto tier, it's 28 dB. So it's like a 160-meter bubble cryogene flux scanner rolling around on the battlefield. It's something that's quite awesome, but very underutilized, I think, in the current meta.
That's actually the only thing. I mean, that's the sole purpose I have for LAVs is, you know, you can put militia tank on them and stuff, but I actually try to put a little bit of SP into having the capability to put a good scanner on them, because that's straight money. That's very useful.
I think that it's kind of a missing thing in the game to have a good, just straight up fast transport. I know that one of our infamous fan fests had suggested like a speeder type of thing.
Yeah.
And without it, I'm not thrilled with the idea of nerfing unfitted labs, because I think they already die pretty darn quickly as an AVer. There's no challenge to killing them, and I like the fact that they offer people a way to get around the map without running for like 3 minutes just to die in 10 seconds.
I gotta agree with Zell on this a little bit. I mean, the ability to kill LAVs right now that the ubiquitous Logilab is gone, like those. I mean, they're kind of made out of fucking plastic. You know.
I mean, the issue before, though, I don't know. It's going to be really curious to see what happens in terms of the meta with the LAVs, because, we reintroduced BPO LAVs for sale, but the starter LAV was never reintroduced. And I'm actually sure, I don't even think can you buy a militia LAV on the market? I'm just not, I haven't never had to buy one, so.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, well, like I said, I tend to agree with Zell's one. They're not really hard to kill, so that's the first thing.
I don't like, even you would take 2 to 3 shots of proto AV to hit just even a standard LAV with not, even if it wasn't like it was fit with pure militia stuff. So
yeah, but like, I mean, think about it. Like you can 2-shot kill an LAV that's not hard. I mean. Like it honestly isn't. Like I've routinely killed LAVs with AV grenades. You know, I mean that. I guess my thought is like they're certainly not at the point where you had the Logilabs where they were just like damn near zombie. I mean, you couldn't kill them.
Speaking of AV grenades, they're increasing the carry count to 3.
Yeah, I did see that, which is pretty handy.
That's good.
But again, like I said, I'm not really. I'll be interested to see how it goes with the lab thing. I'm all about like, hey, fit something on, it's okay. But again, it's not like these things are unkillable. They're pretty easy to kill. So I could.
I think that. More slots would have. I mean, I think giving them I don't know. I think just the fitting bonus may not be enough. I think we're gonna have to see how these roll out. But I think we're gonna find that more slots are also needed for the LAVs as well, for them to be somewhat reasonable.
One thing that just kind of struck me, by the way, no pun intended with this, but like if they're going to cut the tank in half, does that also mean when you bump into stuff or something bumps into you're going to be that much easier to kill?
You know what? I really kind of I expect the answer is yes, because damage, collision, you're going to explode. So J-Labs are going to be even easier to execute with this. because they pop even faster when you run into something.
True, but I'm also thinking about just plain old trying to drive around
and running into a rock and explode.
Yeah, that's exactly what I see is going to happen.
You know, I really wish what they would do is they would just say, okay, here's the collision model that we use for the HAV. Let's just give this to all the vehicles and be done with it. Because right now, the collision for both LAVs and dropships is very unforgiving. I know that dropship squishing was a problem in the past, but I think... especially with the starter fit AVs and stuff, starter fits, and you're getting the plasma cannon now as a starter fit. I don't know. I'm not as concerned with there being dropship squishing.
I can kind of buy that.
Yeah, I think you're totally right, Kane, in that, like I said, I don't think that this fix by any means should be final. I think it should have a full, proper rebalance pass, and that would include more modules and whatnot. I think this is kind of a quick, just like throw something at it to make the unfit LAV less effective. I mean, I guess I disagree that I think that if you want to be able to handle any appreciable amount of AV, you need to actually fit something on the vehicle.
I really think that both the Assault HMG and this nerf to the LAVs was a direct response to countering murder taxi.
Yeah, but, is that a problem?
Not really.
I'm not tracking that that's a beef right now.
It happens, but it's not nearly what it was before. I mean,
here's the thing. Like right now, I'm not worried about getting run down by these damn things. I can kill them very quickly. What I'm seeing right here, and I think he even mentioned it somewhere in a later post was, deliver deadly payloads. Blah blah blah. Let's see. He said something about it where they zoom around with passengers, HMG Sentinels, who then jump out and then zap you. So instead of doing something like, I don't know, making it fucking slower to get in and out of the vehicle, like you do this? Is that where this is coming from?
But getting out of a vehicle is something that would take a client-side patch. So this is something that can be done in a hot fix. That's what I'm thinking.
I think this continues to reinforce my thought pattern that we're making some fairly, some kind of out there changes to some stuff because we can't fix the game, so we're
maybe that
cartooning the game.
Maybe that BPO for the 5 million clone challenge is a speeder bike.
Yeah,
right.
No, I don't know. I guess I think it's the way that the tools that they're given to solve these problems. It's absolutely the wrong tools in many cases to solve what is a root problem, and they just can't get to.
Fine with LAVs being one-shotted, honestly, and by high-end AV on an unfitted vehicle, I think people are going to learn to actually fit the dang things pretty quickly.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I think that if you actually fit it properly, they should be pretty damn tanky. But if you don't put anything on it, I think it should pop as easily as an unfit drop suit. I mean, it should be something you don't want to do if you're going to take any fire.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I'm just not sure that this is really solving anything right now. Okay. Well, let's kind of move on. I'll be very honest with you. I'm a little leery getting into HAVs right now because that's a pretty comprehensive change that I know we've talked about. Would you guys be okay if we tabled the topic about HAVs to perhaps the next show? In terms of what's
sure.
coming out? Would that be okay?
I'm not in the mood to deal with it right now.
Yeah, the only thing that we missed that I would say that might be interesting to bring up is the fact that vehicles are being removed from ambush entirely.
That's a good point. That's a very good point, and it's I think that would be maybe not a bad thing. I know that's definitely going to upset some folks, but
I mean, I've started tanking a pretty good bit lately, and talking to some tankers, they're like, yeah, that makes sense, and then other tankers are like, well, I'm a pilot, so why am I not allowed to play this game mode? This is the kind of the thought. And I can understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, I think it's fine for there to be an environment where people can have, I don't know if it's like a safety net or, I don't know. I just feel like if people are playing just infantry role, they want a place to go do that. And I think the majority of the community is infantry.
Then if that is going to happen, well, I hear what you're saying, man. I think and by the way, I'm purely only being providing a counterpoint to you on this one. I I'm not sure where my thought isn't, because it doesn't affect me that much because I don't play that much ambush, nor do I run vehicles that often. If somebody told you, we want a game mode that there's a safety net, so we don't feel that you should be able to run like a Sentinel in this game mode, like, would you receive it the same way?
Yeah. See, that's the thing. Like, one of the things I do a lot these days is we do party tanks in ambush.
Sure,
OMS.
no, which I think is a great. I love that tactic, by the way.
And it just, oh man, I feel almost dirty sometimes doing it, because it's just a lot of the people just don't know how to react to. And not only that, a lot of the times the way the spawns are in ambush, it's who calls in the vehicle first wins. You know, because you'll have your vehicle down on the ground. Like, I have an SSD, so I'll be down on the ground. I'll have my tank already coming down before, while some guys are still spawning in. So it's,
yeah, if you're trying to spawn vehicles, SSDs are mandatory.
And I can just see in a lot of cases where in ambush OMS, a lot of times it's who spawns in the vehicles first and gets them on to target, denies the other enemy team their chance to spawn in vehicles. And a lot of infantry just don't bother. This is more of a fault. I wouldn't fault the vehicle users for this, but then you have a lot of infantry that don't bother trying to switch to AV because they're more concerned with all the infantry running up on them and killing them. So then the vehicles end up having free reign.
Well, part of the problem is that unlike the vehicles, infantry actually do have to contend with all of the other infantry while trying to potentially AV.
Yeah. I can see both sides of the coin, but I do see that it could potentially help newer players in the game in terms of not having kind of an ease into that kind of aspect. Like, you get to play skirmish and dom to get the kind of mixed, combat environment with vehicles and infantry, but then you have like the team deathmatch, classic team deathmatch in ambush.
Yeah, no, and like I said, I'm not sure I disagree with you on that at all. I just, it's one of those where I'm leery of coming up with a solution of, we're just not going to have this component of the game eligible to be played with in this environment. Now, that being said, I like where I'm okay with it is I kind of make probably the inartful and incorrect logic leap of, well, you can't use smart bombs or caps in high sec or something like that you do in Eve. Like, there's constraints there too. So I can kind of make that sort of mental leap on it. But
when we had a higher player population, it wasn't as much of an issue because you had ambush and ambush OMS as separate things that were selectable. Yeah.
Well, I mean, do you think that in some small way that maybe because the player population isn't that high anymore, that's leading us down this road?
Yeah, I could definitely see that being an issue because the thing about it before is ambush, straight 50 clone ambush, when you removed the vehicles from it, provided that outlet. And the desire, and obviously the desire for that kind of outlet is there. Maybe no longer, they can no longer, who knows, maybe CCP has statistics where people will queue in and they'll see it's an OMS and leave the match. I don't think I've ever really seen lots of people leaving matches for OMS, but.
No, I think you're probably onto it, man. So, by the way, that was a good catch on that one. So probably the last topic for the evening that I kind of wanted to pitch out there to folks is, what did you want to see in Hotfix Echo, or what did you think you were going to see in Hotfix Echo that you didn't see that you want in the next one? And I'll lead off with Pokey on this one.
Real short, I'd like to see some slight tweaks to the commando, and I think that the logistics need a long-deserved buff in many regards.
Okay. Kane?
I'm pretty happy with Echo and what's in it. There's nothing really that stands out to me that as a burning thing that I would want in Foxtrot, although I would love to start seeing some PC issues actually start getting interest, like the clone selling and one of the things that's kind of a prevalent issue right now is alt farming districts, attacking and automatically, even if no one shows up, automatically getting ISK out of those matches. I think that's something that's hot fixable, that could be turned off, that I think should be turned off with upcoming wealth generation from clone selling.
Okay. All right. That's a good catch. Iron Wolf, you back?
Yes, I am.
Uh,
I would like to see the follow up to snipers. That were done in was it Delta? Was it?
I think so. Yeah, it was definitely one of the earlier ones.
Yeah, I'd like to see the follow up to that. Trying to bring in a sense of progression. Adjust some of the nuances between each of the variants. Make the tactical probably a little bit more better in for its ranges, and maybe improve the zoom for everybody.
Okay. All right. I can work with that. Sarai?
I'm trying to remember what I've been looking for lately, and I can't. I'm sorry. Hot fixes are hot fixes. I still lie mostly in focus of the patch content that I want to see.
Which would be what?
Well, that would be telling.
Your ability to play coy has failed miserably, but
Yeah,
I'll let you have that one.
It does.
Okay.
I know.
Let's see. SMB, any thoughts? Anything you wanted to have make it in, or something you'd like on the top of the list for Foxtrot?
I'm going to speak for both myself and Crossa too here when I say that we're still sort of wondering where our Logi buff is. We're big supporters of that. So, I wasn't necessarily anticipating it making an Echo, but, it's definitely something that we've been waiting on for quite some time. But beyond that, I was hoping that the dev team would have upped the salvage even more. I'm hoping that the game goes in that direction. If not, the proposal that I've talked about in the past, to keep what you kill, but at least just more salvage tied to some sort of action in some way, whether that's a number of kills, a war point total, or something. Just make it so that salvage collection is a more active sort of thing. But it looks like salvage is going to stay where it is right now. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's you bring up a couple pretty good ones there. For me, there was basically kind of two things. The first one, you and Pokey just both hit on it, is we've been waiting a long time for like kind of a pass on the Logi suits, and I've actually heard some people that describe bandwidth as a buff, and I think there's been a couple that have described the equipment deployable changes as a buff. And I've also heard people say that, Logis probably need to have their war point generation capability nerfed, or their ability to utilize rep tools the way that we currently do changed. And we've heard absolutely nothing from Rattati, like literally like nothing. That aggravates me, because that is the play style or the thing that I like playing, and I feel like it's the thing that is basically not been touched really at all, or at least not in a meaningful way where it keeps up. And I do contribute a little bit of that, similar to maybe how the commando stuff works out, is that because you have a minority of a fairly small minority of players that truly specialize and get into that role, like maybe our voice isn't hard enough, or because we're not killing people, which is what really creates change. If you think about it, the number one change driver in Dust is the thing that is most killing me is the thing I am most demanding change for. But it's really easy to overlook, all of the other play aspects that don't directly revolve around KDR. So me personally, I was kind of hoping to see that in Echo. I think that had been hinted at a couple times previously, and it just never materializes. And I will also, a slight call out here. There are some pretty lengthy Logi threads that have a lot of great material in them without a single blue tag in them. That I'm not going to say it troubles me or I'm angry, but it does frustrate me a little bit, because there does seem to be a fairly consistent, if not engagement, at least tacit monitoring of things like the barbershop, which, by the way, it's not about the barbershop or the scout community. I mean, I'm all about the fact that they have like a subculture that is very vibrant inside Dust. I'm absolutely all about that. But like, it would be very nice if we would get a little bit of attention to to some of the other play styles, logistics being one. And like I said, I think the commandos probably are still in some kind of weird limbo between the assault suits and something else. So I'm not really sure kind of what to do with that, but it sure feels like they need to have something happen to them. And I guess the last one is an echo of what SMB said, is like a continued tweak or adjustment on sort of the payouts that we get or how we get payouts. I would still point out that even with all the changes, it's still going to take guys like Soraya, who were putting 0 Aurum into the war barge process, like years to get to where
It's so
some
slow.
folks have gotten.
I hit Warbarge level 3 though.
I've been noticing so much more drops though in matches. Like I ended up with well over 1,000 Warbarge components just by playing today.
Yeah, it's a lot better now, but it still doesn't feel quite right.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's when you hit like level 3, was it level 4 is like 10,000 plus Warbarge components for a given subsystem or whatever the hell it is. That's pretty ridiculous. It's like I said, those two things are the ones that I would prefer in a hotfix to be addressed, if at all possible. And I think they're fairly easy to address as well. And I think there's consensus on some things that we can do that are not over the top or game breaking. But it is what it is. So I think that covers what I wanted to talk about for the most part tonight. And what I want to do is very briefly open it up real quick. If there's anything else you guys wanted to touch on, or if there's anything you wanted to engage on at all, because we've got a little bit of time left before we hit shout outs, or we can start kind of moving to shout outs if nobody's got it.
The big thing would be the 5 million clone challenge.
No, we got an update on that yet?
Yeah, we do have some update progress on that. You don't read Skype enough.
I do not.
So it looks like we're not going to hit it because there's been an update on the event that says incoming transmission. It would seem that you guys need a hand. I've disabled the primary systems and added 48 hours to the counter. I've also extracted a drop suit module that you might just get your hands on once I am done with modifications. You're welcome.
Where did you get that?
dust514.com/events/mcc5.
I've been trying to pull that link
and
up
Twitter.
you gave, and it is not coming up.
Okay, so it looks like they've added 2 days to the event, and they're also highlighting that the event exclusive BPO is a drop suit module.
Cool. So let's see if I'm trying to do the mental math in my head of how far off the pace we are. So it sounds like we're off the pace by at least a day if they're going to give us 2.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like they said, the last actual numbers they gave, or not really numbers even, I guess, just ballpark, was they said we were over half as of Saturday morning. So if Saturday morning we're at 2.5 million, and we know that Saturday and Sunday activity is way up from like during the week, I'm kind of surprised we are. I mean, I would think we're at least close. Hopefully they'll post actual numbers soon.
Yeah, I mean, it would be kind of cool if we could get like a running tally, like on the MOTD or something like that. That'd be actually that would be really handy.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other tweets that Frame said was he said, hamster's fallen asleep rebooting and tweeting latest numbers soon. Sorry about the delay. So I'm not sure if there's maybe an issue with getting that metric out.
Okay. I'm just curious, did you think that 5 million clones was a bit aggressive, or were you pretty comfortable with it?
You know, I thought my personal view was that we would hit it, but that it would be like we'd just manage it. I don't know if that might have been a little too confident, but I thought we'd make it. I like, the thing with the previous though is having a 1 million clone over the weekend was, given the fact that we over doubled it every weekend, it wasn't much of a challenge.
Do you think we had a different community base doing that than you do now?
We also had a heck of a lot different numbers.
That's true.
When was the last clone challenge? The 1 million clone challenge.
Yeah, 2 million clone challenge. That was probably around.
I thought it was only a couple months since the last one.
No, it was a while.
It's almost like last year.
It was last year. I think it was even before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I'm seeing
around October-ish.
September 19th was the last one. Or that was the second one, anyways. I don't know do we have more than that?
No, this is 2. Yeah.
Okay.
This is the 3rd, if that makes sense. Okay. No, I also noticed something that was interesting. If this were Eve and the player base did not meet the mark, nobody would get anything. But because this is Dust, we're going to continue to give you more time in order to reach the goal. Which I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just pointing that out. Is that they're probably very cognizant. At least the guys in Shanghai are very cognizant of the fact that it would probably not help anything that they're doing to say, "Oh, so sorry guys, you got nothing. My bad. Try harder next time." That would not go over well, I don't think.
I don't think it would be good press either, too. I think it would just lead to a lot of gnashing of teeth and like, oh, there's not enough people logging in Dust to actually meet this goal, even though CCP probably sat down and crunched numbers.
I'll mention another game that has similar events, so to say, where they had passed and fail conditions, which would have been in Warframe. And for the longest time, players were not allowed to fail events in Warframe. So when the last one came out, the Eyes of Blight event, it was, okay, you have to grind down this one level, and if you don't grind it down enough, you lose a station, which just recently came out. And these stations were supposed to be like little player cities. Well, no one believed that they would actually go out and start filling the events. And sure enough, we're down to 3 stations on the PC version.
Well,
we had 11.
I mean, I think the issue becomes in this situation is more of people go out, they won their 3 matches, so to speak, And that's the other thing that's different. This time around, the last time it was participate in 10 matches. This time it's win 3.
There's also the so-called lack of incentive SP to do it, which I can actually be agreeable, considering we can triple stack those suckers now.
Yeah,
I don't know. They devalued us. Devalue SP is maybe not the right term, but when you can fairly easily crank off 15,000 SP per match, that's without having any modify. Any boosters loaded up. That's definitely over the top.
If you're a Logi, yeah, that's an easy number to hit.
Oh, you throw on your 3 Omega boosters, and you, at the end of the match, you turn on your 3 more extra ones. So,
no, I know, but like I said, like the ability to generate SP is it's so dramatically different than it was.
I do think that a mystery prize was kind of like I think a million. If you had done 1 million SP, in addition to all that other stuff, you would have definitely
I would agree with that.
You would definitely have a more enthusiastic turnout.
One thing I would have loved to see as a prize event as well would have been loyalty points for their rank stuff.
Again, I go
because
back
you're participating in an event, you should get participation points, so to say.
I'm telling you again, man. I go back to we need to it would be really cool if we could come up with some more creative type of events that are not focused on just KDR, because like at the end of the day, like everything in Dust so revolves around just the raw number of kills through any different metric. That's how we do feedback. That's killing's a form of communication, as they say. But that actually, in my opinion, just that overall mindset just drives the game to be more shallow and more shallow over time. So I really wish they would come up with something else. I'm a big fan of using loyalty points for different factions. Iron Wolf, I think that'd be a faction-based event would be fucking awesome.
I wasn't referring to the faction warfare ones. The game one, the one that a lot of players have complained about.
Your loyalty rank.
Oh,
yes.
Sure, yeah, I'd be down with that. Yeah, sure. That'd be pretty cool to upgrade. I mean, that way you could increase your rank without buying more arm. I'd be a fan of that.
So does anybody have any theories about what the module's going to be?
I think Pokey's got it right in the Skype channel.
Yeah, I
Universal
think
damage mod.
The problem is there's 3 of us in here that can't actually talk to you about it. So,
damn.
Sure.
Well, that's okay.
But yeah, I think it's a damage mod that affects heavy, light, and sidearm weapons at the same time. That would be a BPO that makes sense for the event because you're killing people, and it would be unique because current damage mods only affect one of the 3 at a time.
My pie in the sky theory is that they figured out how to get skins to work. And so
That was actually the first thing I thought of, is that they've got a way to do skins, and then I saw that.
Because it would be something that would actually warrant there being a dev blog for it.
Yeah,
That's
I'll
true.
buy that.
That's true. That would, if that was the case, they should have told people that, and they probably would have showed up more.
Yeah, that's there you go. Well, that also explains why they're not going to let you quote unquote fail.
Because we don't want to lose our segue into a new feature.
Because they knew they were going to release it anyway.
Yeah, I would be ecstatic if that was the case. I think that'd be really awesome.
If you want to tinfoil even more, you can look at what the little message is. I've extracted a dropsuit module that you might get your hands on once I'm done with modifications.
That's pretty tinfoily, but yeah, I can see what you're getting, man.
Okay.
And it's one of the Dust NPC officers, too.
Yeah, that's true. It's like the first mention of any lore-ish thing that I've heard coming from Dust in a long time.
A Kryn skin?
I could see it.
Yeah, that would be neat.
Well, okay. So, any other thoughts on the clone challenge, boys, before we go into shoutouts? I'll take that a resounding no. All right, so we're going to start at the top of the list, work our way down real quick with shoutouts. Iron Wolf?
I'd like to give a shout out to Blackbird Entertainment Interactive for restoring one of my most favorite games of all time to a modern PC platform. That'll be Homeworld 1 and 2. I'd also like to give a shout out to Rotati for his hard work over the last few weeks on trying to get Echo out and just handling just everything all at once. Enjoy your time in FanFest.
Good deal. Kane?
Just again, a shout out to the community that keeps up with this game, and also a shout out to Negative Feedback Alliance.
Awesome. Pokey?
Just shout out to the player base for taking part in the Million Clone Challenge. It was ambitious, I think, but I think overall we did a pretty good job, even if we needed a slight extension. So, yeah, thanks, guys.
All right. Let's see. SMB?
Yeah, shout out to everybody at Molan Labe, as always. Shout out to the community. Thanks for playing the game. I'd also like to say that if you are going to be in Iceland next week, I am looking for a buddy to head over to Eyjafjallajökull. I believe that's kind of how it sounds. The big volcano out there that erupted back around 2010. I'm trying to get a tour out there. And if anybody wants to explore that with me, let me know. So hit me up on Twitter, PSN, forums, wherever. So, but thanks for having me on, Jay.
Yep, no problem. It's Soraya?
I'm giving my shout out to Quaif. Buy some. I apparently have ships now that are Quaif ships from the FanFest stuff, so I have to make them.
Okay. Let's see.
I should actually do a thing now, because it should technically be possible now between Dust and Eve to always be wearing Quaif all the time.
It somehow doesn't surprise me. Okay. All right. Well, that's pretty legit. All right. I guess it's up to me then. So, a lot of different stuff going on in Dust. A lot of different stuff going on in Eve. Didn't really even talk about the Sov stuff going on in Eve, which we probably do need to cover at some point. In general, I will save the rest of my shout outs for a later date for other show topics and all that kind of good stuff. But what I would like to do is give a shout out to Jadek Menaheim, who is currently studying for finals in his art and communication degree. And generally what he's doing is he's taking some 3D captures of Dust activity. He's overlaying some hentai, and then he's passing it off as some sort of avant-garde sort of statement about the duality of the virtual world versus the real world, which should be pretty interesting, and you could probably get away from that in the liberal hippie-ass college that he's going to. So, to one each, Mr. Jadek Menaheim, I say to you, sir, Baraka! And that will bring episode 44